Bonsoir, Miss Abby. Welcome back to Monaco. Last time, we just wanted to set the world on fire. This time, we'll be making a cash withdrawal. This level overall isn't too hard. There's a little bit of tricky security on the street level, and it's actually in this area I'm in right here. But honestly, I won't be able to do much with it until I get a little bit more gold to use some items. So it seems like Inspector Voltaire is pretty much directly on the trail of our thieves, based on what the lookout was telling him. And I guess this leads to the question of, since the lookout is giving these things away, perhaps much like the locksmith story, was this all planted? Was it all, it seems a little, what's the word, suspicious that the lookout, who is also the blonde and the redhead, would just give these things away. You know, considering she wants to escape with the gentleman just as much as anybody else. What reason does she have to lead Inspector Voltaire to where we're going? Also, I really like this part of the level because it's a hedge maze. And you can duck in and out of hedges and completely avoid guards, and I really like it. Using the pickpocket who gets in the bushes faster is really nice about it, because you can get in there, you know, if you get attention on you, you can very quickly hop into a bush and just get on the other side and nobody will be any the wiser. But it does work just as well with other characters, since the time to get into a bush is only about a second. But it's still a really fun set piece, and I kind of wish it appeared in at least one more level, but as it is, I like it. The uniqueness of it really adds something. So anyway, we've established by now that there's a very good to almost certain possibility that there are not 8 thieves. So the question is, which facets of these thieves are made up? Or I guess a better way to describe it is, which facet of these thieves is the dominant one? For instance, take the locksmith and the mole. Even when you're making your way out in the locksmith's prison break, there is a mole hole dug. That is the way you make it out of the prison. So the possibility seems strong to me that the locksmith is a fabricated persona for the mole. There's almost nothing tying him to anywhere.
Qui va là? Stop. Arrêtez-vous immédiatement. Ouais, bon. Ça doit être un chat. Identifiez-vous immédiatement.
I really kind of goof up trying to get through the security because for some reason I missed that crossbow, but I'd get there eventually. So, if we take at face value that the locksmith as he is does not exist, then what about the other characters? You have the pickpocket and the gentleman. Obviously, the pickpocket is a fleshed out character. He has a monkey. And obviously, no person who has a monkey could ever lie to you. But this raises the question of, what about the gentleman? The only thing we really know about the gentleman is that at one point he was a wealthy man who was a banker. That doesn't exactly tell us a lot about his persona itself. Considering the pickpocket used to be a wealthy man, it's very possible that the pickpocket, our blonde-haired hobo could be the gentleman the entire time.
Arrête!
He could have been a young CEO who made his money early and happened to buy a mansion that the blonde tried to break into. So, this possibility exists. I don't find it very likely that there is multiple facets. One or the other of the pickpocket or the gentleman has to be the dominant facet. The question there is which one. For the most part, all our experience has been with the pickpocket since, he gave us his story and everything like that. But as for the gentleman, the only time we've really seen or heard the gentleman is in stories. As for the lookout, the blonde, and the redhead, I don't see much of a problem with saying that those characters are all the same person without too many differences. The redhead is a team player with the gentleman, much as the locksmith claimed she was, which turned out to be true. But aside from that, there's not really anything that directly contradicts the redhead not being the blonde, or not being the lookout. Obviously, if she can change her hair from blonde to red, I don't see any reason that she wouldn't be able to change it to black to be the lookout.
Qui va là? Stop! Arrêtez-vous immédiatement. Je te tire, c'est les bras. Voilà.
So the truth is, you just really have no reason to doubt who is the lookout. But probably the most interesting question here is, what about the hacker and the cleaner? I believe the answer to the hacker and the cleaner is best advertised by asking what prisoners were in jail when they made their escape. Now, obviously, there were only 4 thieves in the prison when they made their escape. All of the prisoners, the gentleman, the pickpocket, locksmith, lookout, and cleaner, all made their escape from Cell Block B at the same time. But there were only those 4 thieves in prison. According to the lookout stories, she seems to have had a good idea of where the cleaner, or perhaps the hacker, would have been. Also consider that when going over the cleaner's, or rather the hacker's origin mission, she mentioned that you're referring to the weirdo in the cell next to mine. That almost directly says the hacker has to be the one in jail, since, obviously the cleaner's out starting fires. I'll admit there are possibilities that the cleaner and the hacker could still be the same person. Maybe the hacker set up a time bomb, firebomb, stuff like that, but more than likely, and this is a theory that's been floated around quite a bit, the hacker and the cleaner are different people. The question remains then that, who could they be? It's mentioned in the cleaner's origin story that the cleaner has a brother. Again, whether or not this is complete fabrication is up to interpretation. We are taking the lookout's word on this. But her story does fit. Every time we've seen the cleaner, he's been quiet, and every time we've seen the hacker, his mind seems to move too fast. He speaks in riddles, or when referring to DNA evidence, he refers to a certain DNA sequence. He can't slow down, so the possibility that the cleaner and the hacker are brothers seems pretty good to me.
Tant pis. Pourtant, j'étais sûr d'avoir entendu quelque chose.
Regardless, this does raise the question of how many thieves are there and where are they? My belief is that the prisoners who were in jail at the time of the escape are the pickpocket, portraying the gentleman, the mole, portraying the locksmith, the lookout, who, well, and the hacker, because the cleaner was out starting a fire. At least that's my belief. The only problem you'll run into here on the second floor is probably the gift shop. The greenhouse I really like because it has alarm panels and a couple flickering lasers, but it's dark, so if you run into somebody, you can pretty easily make your getaway. The gift shop seems a little bit intimidating, but all you have to do is get this virus here, and you can knock out this safe very easily. If you don't like trying to approach it through the greenhouse, then you can also approach it through that key door down at the bottom where the bridge is. suppose some of these questions arise where you might think, where did all these plans start?
Qui va là?
Let's say that the hacker was one of the people left behind when they were making their hotel escape, so to speak. When did this all come together? And I believe this starts in the very first Origins mission, which is the mole. The civilians that are hanging around the area all speak with the same verbal tics of the other thieves. There are two men, one who speaks like the hacker and one who speaks like the gentleman, and there is a woman who speaks in the same manner as the redhead. And as I mentioned before, I may have mentioned before, the prison break in the locksmith story has you using mold or dug tunnels to make it out of the prison. So it seems more than likely that the mole was the first one brought in, portraying himself as the locksmith, and that, when the time was right, he may have dug a hole or two,
Ah,
as the mole tends to do.
quoi? Qui est là?
Still, you might think Inspector Voltaire is very definitely on the lookout for 8 thieves, considering he's never really had anything to tell him that there are any more than 8 thieves. All of this we think about the 5 thieves is based on what we know about the breakout. We know that 4 thieves broke out of were in the prison and broke out of the prison. But Inspector Voltaire only has 2 different stories that somewhat corroborate each other to say that there are 8 thieves. The main difference is, what role did those thieves play? What motives did they have? And as we can see here in these missions, Voltaire's trying to follow the trail, and trying to figure out what motives would they have for going back to these areas. With following the motives, he definitely has a pretty good chance of following the thieves, and so far he's 2 for 2.
J'imagine tout l'argent qu'il y a ici. Qu'est-ce qu'on est payé?
The 3rd floor of this area is not very hard, as long as you have something to break lines of sight, such as all these trees in the arboretum. There's definitely a very good chance that you can make it through with no problem. Probably the biggest issue you might run into is the safe up in the caverns, but if you have something of either distracting the guard or getting the guard out of your way, you can open that up at your leisure.
Oh, et puis... Tant pis.
The last concern for this level is the safe in the upper right. It's a very wide open area. There are no ways to break lines of sight aside from running back into the hedge maze, and it's got 2 lasers watching it. It can be a trial, but if you tackle it the right way, there's nothing to worry about. The right way, as always, being liberal use of smoke bombs.
Quoi?
Retour à la normale.
With that, all we have to do is make our way back down to the escape, which is where we came in.
Eh oh, y'a quelqu'un? C'est bizarre.
Hein? C'est pas de la merde, ça.
The only problem is that both of these cars have alarms, but once again, smoke bombs will save the day.
Je...
Please join me next time when we take another look at the gentleman and see, again, just where he came from.